Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. If you are new, welcome back. If you are not, I am Dr. Melissa Ohden with Dr. Melissa Ohden Coaching and Consulting, and I am super excited to have a guest with me today. But before we get there, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please go and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell and do all the things, because when you do that, you get notified when new videos go up on this channel. So go subscribe, ring the bell, all the things, and that way you are always in the know as to what's going on here on the Helping People Heal channel. But I am really excited today to be able to introduce a dear friend of mine who is an author. She has just published a book, and we're going to talk about this today. And part of the reason we're going to talk about this is because, as you guys know, if you've been following me for a while, you know that one of the 7 F's of ULA is fun. And we may touch on a couple more, but some people for fun, they love to read. I mean, we're talking about hobbies, reading, all of those things that are under fun. You do not need to go and climb Mount Everest for it to be fun, for it to be an F of ULA. In fact, I would not find that fun. But some of you might. But we're going to talk about this new book. I'm so excited. I have CA Huemer here today, and you've just written a phenomenal book called Art from Darkness. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here, Melissa. I appreciate the time.
You're very welcome. We've known each other a long time.
Years.
Yeah. In fact, I was trying to think this morning about how long it actually been, and I believe we probably met. So I finished my MSW in 2001 and went to work for the hospital. And I think that we probably met not too long after that, maybe late 2001 or 2002. So we've been,
yeah, I think so.
We were in complementary disciplines. And so we met and a long time ago and used to see each other all the time. And then we had the stretch of time where we didn't, and then we reconnected, and this is so much fun. Friends, ULA friends.
It is, and it's amazing how we have not lost a beat.
I know.
Even with all the years in between.
I know. I'm just so blessed to have people in my life like that. And I would say to you that we're very fortunate to work in the county that we do, because I believe we have a pretty tight-knit community in this county, and we just work with some of the best people still. So I'm so glad to have you on today. And let's talk a little bit about this book. First of all, tell us how this came about. What happened?
Well, long story short. So Art from Darkness, it's a suspense romance. It's a story that is set in Fort Worth, which I really love. Oh, pardon me. My cat's joining me.
Yeah. You know what? Cats are welcome on this channel.
Well, and cats play a major part in the book, so that's okay.
And I love the fact that this is set in our fair city. I love this so much.
Yeah, and I was able to tap into parts of the city that I used to drive through on my sales calls. So it was always fun to imagine what was going on and then to pick up on some of those. But it's a story about a retired Navy SEAL named Sam Slater. He now works for Homeland Security, and he's been charged with stopping the smuggling of weapons across our southern border. But he still has his own personal demons, his fear of failure, fear of failing those that he loves. So he's working through that. Plus, he's looking for the person that's doing the weapon smuggling, who happens to be Carlos Ramirez, the handsome debonair attaché to the Mexican consulate. And they're both competing for the love of the beautiful Kate Hunter. So, it's romance, it's got mystery, it's got suspense, it's got thrills. I hope I married all those well enough so that it's a page turner. I have one friend that bought it, went home, crawled into a hot bath, and she had to refill the bathtub 3 times because she was so engrossed in the book, and she had to finish it, and the water kept cooling off.
Well, I probably will need to do that. I was just telling you before we came on air that I unfortunately have not had a chance to read this yet, just because of the season that I'm in and how long it took me to get the book and all that stuff. But anyway, it's right here, and I cannot wait probably this weekend. We're supposed to get some more rain out here, so it may be a really good weekend to just curl up with a good book and read. So yeah, what else do you want to tell us about kind of the overview of the book before we start asking some real specific questions?
Well, as I joked earlier, the love scene starts on page 155 if you just want to jump to that. But it's,
and I was like this, what? Tell
Um,
us.
what I find interesting is people asked how long it took me to write the book, and I got to tell you that it was a month. It took me about 30 days to get it all on the ground, but it was something that had been percolating in my brain for probably the last 40 years. So here comes the cat again.
Yeah, well,
As my
mine is down here too, so they
are out of the way. So about 40 years ago, I imagined the hero, Sam Slater, and he always looked the same. He might have changed what he did for a profession, but he was always very stoic, very in control, the good guy, the white hat. I always had the feminine hero, Kate. She was always the same. And all of those characters just kind of developed over the years, and different storylines came into play. And finally, in June of 2021, I think it was, I sat down and I said, I think I'm going to write this. And about a month later, I had a book. And what's interesting is, you don't know that it's a book. You always question when you're embarking on this new adventure, and writing was not something I'd ever really done to this degree. The occasional marketing brochure,
Yeah.
but to actually sit down and create something that is so personal, that exposes so much of your personality and your beliefs. And so I had a friend read it, and she came back and she said, I think you've got a book here. And I said, okay, now what do I do?
Hey, now what?
So, and there's tons of things, they're the vanity press publishers that you pay them and they print your book, and it's really ridiculously expensive. And I said, oh no, I can't do that.
Yeah, I've heard that.
There's Amazon. You can print for free with Amazon, but there's so many challenges with getting it edited. How do you format it? And then you send it off to a legitimate publisher, and you sit back and take all the knocks with being rejected, which I was really okay with. And when you've got something that you're passionate about, and that you're putting yourself out there, being rejected only helps you to grow more.
Yes.
And I was blessed in that one of the editors not only sent me a very nice email, but also gave me some pointers, things that I needed to improve upon. And so I went back to the drawing board, and I tweaked that, and I sent it back to her and said, thank you for giving me all that sound advice. I hope that I have done your advice justice, and I rewrote it. What do you think now? And that was the Wild Rose Press, and Leah picked up on it, and she says, yeah, you got a book here too. So
wow,
it has been a dream come true. And since then, I've written a sequel, which is under contract, called Artistic Deception. And I'm working on the third one, which will be a continuation of Sam and Kate's adventures. Plus I've got a serial killer book that's set in Arlington, Texas.
Oh no.
And then I've got a book that really is near and dear to my heart, that is probably going to be the most difficult to finalize. And that is a journey of discovery for a woman who is recently widowed. She's 48, because I figured 68 was too old for that. But she has modeled a lot on my life, and people that read it any of the books that they read, they're going to get insight into who I am and things that I've experienced, which is scary in itself, but it's also wonderful to be able to be that genuine and that open with folks. And I think that I've experienced a lot in my life, and maybe there's something that someone can take away from it and grow themselves.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I mean, when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that journey of particularly the midlife woman, and how much this decade, or these couple of decades anyway, of our lives really are that kick in the pants, that it's like, okay, that first half of your life is done. You've gotten those lessons. Now this is your time. This is when you get to make your mark on the world. And I believe we have an obligation to share that with younger women. Whether they hear us or not is not the point. I think we just have to get that information out there. And I think writing is a really good way to do it. I've been seeing ads on my Facebook thread, and you may have too, and now you will because we're talking about it if your phone is sitting next to you. But these ads about, blogging, and people thought it was dead, but we really need it now. And what is a blog but a bunch of words that have been put together very carefully to convey an idea to an audience of people who may need it. And a book is exactly the same. It may be a little longer than a blog, although the way I blog, people may think, why is she writing a book? Anyway, but a book, but I'm with you. I love writing. I find it to be very cathartic. And for the folks that get my weekly emails, they know that, I love to write those. I spend a lot of time, for the most part, depending on what week it is, really putting a lot of thought into that. But, in terms of you shifting into this career, you had a very different career before this. And this is one of the things that we talk about at Newell Field in particular. When people are getting ready to, or wanting to make a career change, I believe you were at the end of one career, and you may not have even thought this was going to be a new career, but what was that like for you? What was going on in your head? I mean, do you see this as a second chance to have another career? Like, what are you thinking about that?
I think when I first started writing, it was more, I don't have children. I am the last in my family line. So it was more of a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that as an author, my name will live beyond me. So that was kind of a consideration. Now that I'm finding that I'm doing it and loving it so much, and that there's actually a potential for it being a new career, yeah, it's an opportunity. And I don't think we should ever stop growing, and I don't think that we should ever give up on our dreams. The dream might be the career that you've been doing for the last 30, 40 years, or 10 years, if you're younger. But it might also be something that when you retire, just sitting around and baking cookies isn't enough. And you want to pursue, you want to feed that beast that's been crying to get out for years.
Yeah. They say, the collective they say that everybody has a book in them somewhere. So I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what mine is, because I feel that too, just because I am a writer, and it just hasn't come out in a book yet. Actually, that's not true. I wrote my doctoral dissertation. That was a book, and it's actually laying on my ottoman in there in my living room. But it's just so fascinating to me how people can make these transitions and changes and embrace that change. You and I both know, because we've both worked in healthcare, that when people retire and they don't have anything coming up behind that, bad things can happen, like really, really bad things, like, premature death and illness and all sorts of really not so desirable things. And so I'm with you that I think people really need to think about what's next. You may retire from what you're doing at the moment, but that doesn't mean you need to retire from life. And I think finding that hobby, that craft, that new career, whatever that looks like, I think that's really important for people's health. I mean, are you finding that to be true for yourself, that you now have a new purpose and that's kind of exciting and fulfilling?
Well, and always having volunteered and done things with my church has kept me engaged.
Mm-hmm.
But I will give you the example of my husband. He is a wine salesman, and we've talked about his retiring. And one of the things that I said is, what are you going to do when you retire? And he says, well, I'll garden, I'll work in the yard. And I said, well, that's only good for 6 months of the year. What are you going to do? Napping in the recliner is not an option.
Yeah.
And so, I think that has made him think about it, and he's trying to figure out how to marry something he's passionate about, which is wine, with something that he can do, maybe not full time. And you don't have to do your next activity full time,
right?
But at least do it to the point where you feel fulfilled and you're not sitting back doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I have time with writing. I still take time for doing my yoga and doing the garden and putzing with the cat, baking cookies. Yes, I bake cookies.
And we're getting into that season, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like,
oh no, my Christmas cookies are a disaster. We don't do those. They taste good. They just don't look real good.
Yeah, I understand that, believe me. So, so I think a lot of people want to know, and I certainly did when we visited before this, about the writing process, because I think for each writer, it's different. You know, for as many writers as you would have in a room together, I think the writing process is probably different for each one of them. Is that true? And if so, how do you approach your writing? And is it different by book? So many questions.
Wow. Is it different by book? Yeah, I don't think it is. For me, it's not. And what I have heard from other authors is that there's two approaches. There's the plotter and the pantser. And the plotter is a person that writes down everything in an outline form and knows they're going from point A to point B to point C. And there's a plan. I'm a pantser. I've got a vague idea of where I want to go. I know my characters and I start writing. And how things unfold oftentimes surprise me. I will suddenly have this situation come up with my antagonist, and I'll go, oh, and I'll be writing a scene and it'll be totally different than I had expected it to come out.
Yeah.
So it's fun to be surprised. It's fun to watch that development. It probably takes a lot longer for me to get my book from start to finish, because I will go back and go, oh, no, wait a minute. That had to change in the beginning. He should have done that first before this could happen. So I'm going back and I'm constantly organizing, and I probably do become more of a plotter once I get it all done, because then I'm organizing it and putting it in the right order. But I love writing my scenes, my dialogue scenes. There is something that I close my eyes and it's like I'm watching a movie unfold.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to them have their conversation, the characters, and I'm typing. And one scene in the book that I wrote about, I'm doing that. And when I got done with the scene, I realized that I had tears streaming down my cheeks. I was just watching it in my brain, even though I was typing it, it was unfolding and my emotions were unfolding with it.
Yeah.
God, it was just so moving.
Yeah, I bet it was. And you know, there are so many great health related things that we could talk about here, right? By using your imagination, especially with the brain, right? And keeping that brain engaged. And even if you're not publishing a book, y'all, come on. Even if you're just journaling, you know, this can be very, very healthy for your brain, for your emotions. I mean, you know, talk about that a little bit, you know, since you talked about the whole crying thing at the computer.
Oh yeah, and how cathartic it is to get these things out. It may end up on the cutting room floor if you're writing a book. It may not be what's right at that moment, but just in writing it, you've released that, and you've set it free. Anger is a huge one. If I'm writing a scene and there's anger in it, that anger is coming from inside. There's something that triggered me to write that scene and to feel those emotions. And here I've written them out and I've resolved them in the book. And all of a sudden I'm going, I've resolved them in my relationship with somebody else, or in whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And any kind of writing. And when you mentioned earlier about everybody's got a book in them, I can't tell you the number of people when they heard that I had published said, oh, I want you to ghostwrite my book. I'm thinking, I don't know how to do that. But yeah, everybody wants to do it. They just may not feel comfortable doing it themselves.
Right. That's interesting, because it's hard, I think, to get in other people's heads in that regard, because they always, and I say they again, you know, the collective they, it's always about writing what you know. And so I would think that there would be a teaching opportunity there to teach people how to draw that out of themselves. Now, part of that, again, social worker hat going on here, sometimes people don't want to get in touch with that stuff, right? And when you start writing that stuff and you start touching on those nerves, sometimes people shut down and they don't get to where they want to go because they just don't feel like they can feel those things or walk through that. I would think, though, that the act of writing would probably be like hand-holding you through that. I don't know. Am I conceptualizing that correctly, or what do you think?
I think you've got a broad picture of it, and what happens is when we fear letting our emotions, well, come out, that's when those blocks are created. When we do shut down, and then the writing block happens. If you find a way to work through those blocks, and for some people it's reading a particular poem, it may be, for me, listening to a piece of music that turns something, and all of a sudden then the creative juices start flowing. But to work yourself through it and to not be fearful, no one's going to see that if you don't want them to.
Yeah.
Whatever you write down, so you can let it all hang out. What a great way to see a picture totally clear without any other input from it. This is all from inside, and suddenly you sit back and you reread it and you go, oh, now it makes sense.
And usually for me, those things that sound so great in my head, when I say them or when I write them, all of a sudden I'm like, sometimes that doesn't sound as great or as big, right? We make things so big in our head, and I'm so guilty of this. I think a lot of women are. We make things so big in our heads that, when we finally do say them or write them, they're just not so scary anymore, right? Yeah.
And I think that sometimes you read it and it's brilliant. And now all of a sudden you're going, this makes all the sense in the world. You can answer questions, you can open yourself up. It's almost like meditation or self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
You're freeing yourself and
Right.
just letting all of your thoughts and your emotions come out. And it's in black and white, so that you can go back and read it with some distance too. That's the other thing is sometimes we're so close to a problem or our emotions that when we put them on paper, we can look at them with a bit of objectivity.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you're a sci-fi fan, but about, I don't know, a decade or so ago, the Sci-Fi Channel had their anniversary, their big 25th anniversary or something like that. Anyway, they were talking about all of these different shows on Sci-Fi, and they were talking specifically about the new Battlestar Galactica. I don't know if you ever saw the old one or saw the new one, but
the old one, yes.
The new one was really fabulous. But they had the director on, and the question was posed to him, why do you think that people are okay with what's happening here? And they were just asking him some questions about the show, and he said, this was so profound to me. He said, we have a lot of problems here on Earth, but and we have a hard time talking to each other about them. But when we take them out of the context of our reality and put them in space, all of a sudden it's okay to talk about those things. And all of a sudden we've removed ourselves, just like you said, we've removed ourselves from the position that we're in, and we put it out in this, literally in space in the story. And all of a sudden it's okay to have this discussion, and we can have productive, commentary around what's happening in this problem and how we can solve it. And I think I'm hearing you say the same thing with writing in general, is that we can remove ourselves from what we think is so bad, possibly, and see it differently. And I think that's what the director's point was that we see things differently when we put them in a different context. It's the same problem.
It is.
We just put it in a different context, and all of a sudden it's doable and solvable.
Well, and using your sci-fi example and going back to the generation that I'm probably from with Star Trek.
Yeah.
And that was such a cutting edge show. And that one episode that they had, that the character was white on one side of his face and black on the other, and his enemy was black on this side and white on this side.
Yes.
They said, what's the difference? And he says, well, but he's black on the wrong side, or he's white on the wrong side. Right. Yeah, they addressed so many social issues, and things that we would never have discussed in day-to-day stuff. It's that Romulan neutral zone.
Yeah. That show was so far ahead of its time It's not even funny. And even now, I mean, it's playing every Saturday night on MeTV right now. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's on Star Trek. The original is on MeTV every Saturday night. And I watch it now. And for those of you who've not seen it, it may seem a little cheesy, but if you look past some of the challenges that they had, they were filming in the 60s, for crying out loud. So it's not like we have stuff to, like we have today. But for what they were able to work with, holy moly, they did some amazing things with that show. And they had some amazing conversations about society and race and culture. And it was just so far ahead of its time. I just don't think people really appreciated it in its time. I think they do now. I think they do now. As is evident for all of the remakes that have
And there's so many things that any kind of art form can give us that's profound, that makes us think, that suddenly we're seeing things. Never give up, never surrender. What is that from? It's from Galaxy Quest. I think it is. But it makes sense. That is an attitude we should have. Never give up, never surrender to whatever may be an obstacle or a challenge.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that area of inspiration really is where I try to live in my business. I mean, I may have very specific things that I coach and teach on, but I think underneath all of that, I really want to inspire people to think about your life differently. We talk in ULA a lot about living on purpose and not by default, living by design and not by default. Yep. And I think when you're surrounding yourself with things that inspire you, when I go to Santa Fe, I love to go to Santa Fe for a very specific reason. It is a very spiritual city for me, for one thing, but it's also very inspirational. There's something about the culture of that city that I just cannot get enough of. And typically when I'm on the road and I go there, I'll have an epiphany or something will happen, and it makes me make that shift in my life that I ask my coaching clients to do too, right? It's like, you come to me because you want to make the shift. Let's work together and make that happen. And so that inspiration, I think, is really important. And I think in your art form in particular, it's so easy for folks to access, right? I mean, you can either read a book or you can get it on Audible or whatever it is. And there's so many ways to get that in your brain and surround yourself with that. And I think that's really important to health overall, creativity, and all of those things.
Well, and that's another part of the joy of writing, is that every time I read a book now, not only am I enjoying it because I'm enjoying the story, but I'm also learning. I'm learning about different approaches to character development in the arc. And I try every day to come away with something new. Sometimes it may be a turn of a phrase. Something will impress me, and I'll rattle off something in my brain and go, ooh, that's a good line. And I'll write it down. Hopefully I'll use it someday, but who knows?
Do you have notes in your phone where you're like, yeah, I got to remember that.
When I go walking, I've got my phone going and I'm talking to it, and people, I'm sure, think I'm crazy, but that's okay.
You know what? Walking for me, anybody who knows me at all knows that walking is my exercise drug of choice. And, it always has been, but it had stopped for a while. And in 2020, I picked it up again, because guess what? That was really the only thing I could do was go outside, right? And not, so I noticed that it would take me about 10 minutes to kind of settle on my walk. And then all of a sudden, and I wanted to go and just get away from everything. Like, I didn't want to think about anything. That was my end of the day. I couldn't wait to do it. And what I found was that once that first 10 minutes was up and my brain started to settle, I started solving problems and things started coming to me automatically. And I didn't want it to happen, but it did. And I think there's something very creative in just that process as well. And I don't know. I mean, what do you do to maintain your creativity besides maybe walking? That's my favorite thing in the world. But what else do you do? What tips could you give our viewers to kind of help them tap into that creativity? Because I know some people are sitting out there going, I know I've got a book in me. I know I do. What tips do you have for them?
I do a lot of creative stuff as I'm lying in bed trying to go to sleep. I may have a scene that's been troubling me, not knowing how to move it onto the next part of the character's arc. And as I'm lying in bed, it almost becomes a dream. So I will do that. If I'm listening to music, I I quote a lot of or identify a lot of music or songs in the book because the songs have inspired me or made me think of something that brought this scene along. So music's a huge deal for me. If I'm reading a book and somebody has turned a phrase a particular way and I admired how they used the alliteration or whatever else, there are so many things that can trigger creativity, and I think we just need to be open to them.
Yeah.
And never question. If something comes into your brain, think about it and go, oh, yeah, that will help me. And everything can. I mean, my goodness, even smelling flowers or spices or anything else may trigger something that will help you to move to the next part of the creative process. You never know, and you should never shut yourself off to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know there are probably some people out there going, man, I wish I could tap into that. You can. That's the thing. And I think it's really just making a conscious decision to be more present in your life. And that's part of what I coach people through is, let's define what it is that you want. First of all, what's your end game? That's what I always say to students. What's your end game? And that's exactly what I say to them. What is it that you're wanting to do? So, where's it you want to go? And then let's figure out how to get you there so that you can be present in your life, because we get one life and that's it. And the older I get, and unfortunately, the more funerals I go to, the more this is like in my face, right? Like we get one chance at this. And if we don't take advantage of it right now, then it's going to be over and we're going to be like, well, shoot. I mean, we have been given this life and we've been put here for a purpose, right? We're not accidents. None of us are accidents here. We all have a God-given purpose on this earth. And I feel like this is such an important conversation to have, because I believe with the people that I've talked to in the recent past that they really struggle with creativity because they feel so weighed down by life. And I think being creative can help lift some of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And everybody has creativity in them. They just have to find out where to channel it, how to channel it. Writing for me works. I'm a musician. That helps too. Everybody has something that they can do. Sometimes just planting a pot of flowers to put on your front porch is creative. I can't do it, but I know other people that are just genius. So just try.
Yeah.
If there's something that fascinates you, if there's something that excites you, just try. What do you have to lose? My husband probably goes crazy every time we have a project come up at the house, and I'll look at it and I'll say, well, we should do that. And he'll go, we don't know how to do it. I said, well, it can't be that tough. I mean, I'll try anything as long as it's not electrical, because electrical can kill you.
Yes, it can.
But anything else that you do, what's the worst that can happen? You screw it up and you got to pay somebody to come in and fix it. Well, you would have paid them to fix it to begin with. Right. So why not try it and have that self-satisfaction of having accomplished it if you were able to? Oh, what the heck?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes. Talk about resilience, right? That is just part of building resiliency. A whole other topic we could totally delve into. So I'm jokingly, not so jokingly asking you, when are the movie rights coming out to this?
I know. I sent out something on LinkedIn to all of you film directors. I think it would make a great movie. Friends have asked about it being made into a movie. Obviously, thank you, Melissa. We'll see what happens. I think it's a good story for that.
Well, we have a couple of really great locations here in the DFW Metroplex where they are shooting lots of movies and TV shows. So it would not be beyond the realm of possibility to have that shot right here in our fair city.
That's right. That's right. On location. And Texas is a right to work state. You don't have to be a member of SAG to get the gig. So
yeah, absolutely. Which is, phenomenal. So tell us, please, where can we get Art from Darkness?
Okay. It's available on Amazon. Also, Barnes and Noble, Nook has it, iTunes has it, and hopefully we'll have a few more. I think I saw Walmart with it on their website.
Oh, wow.
Definitely Google Art from Darkness, CA Humor. It'll probably take you to Amazon first because Amazon is the marketing machine.
Yes.
But
That's where I
yeah,
got mine.
definitely. And also, I don't know if this makes a big deal for a lot of people, but I am donating the proceeds from the book to my church.
Oh,
So when you purchase it, not only do you get a good read, but you also do some good work. And
oh,
that's
fantastic.
the
Yes.
win-win.
Is there an Audible version? And I don't mean Audible as in the brand. I just mean, is there an auditory version of the book yet?
There is not.
Okay.
That is hopefully down the road when we get the movie deal.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yes. Yes. We'll work on that, right? Because I'm telling you, I'm all about supporting local folks and the work that they do. And I think that once I can get into this, and I have a feeling I'm not going to be able to put it down. So once I get into this, I have a feeling we'll be like, let's go, let's get this on screen. So
Well, and if anyone is interested in the DFW area, and well, actually nationwide, I can do Zoom. I am happy to sit down and visit with people and share my passion, my excitement with the book and with anything else that they want to talk about. Page 155. No, wait a minute.
wait, what page? I love it.
And we'll go from there. But yeah.
So much fun. Well, listen, CA Humor, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Best of luck on the sales of this book and the one that's coming up. I probably need to read this one before the next one comes out.
Yes, you do. It is a continuation.
I'm gonna have to sit down and dig into this weekend because, like I said, I think it's gonna be raining again. But what perfect weather to do that. But thank you so very much. We wish you the very best, and thank you for coming on this channel today.
Thank you.